They stapled orange notices to our mailboxes at dawn, while the street still wore its fog like a shawl. No more walking, no more chalk, no more wheels. The sidewalk, they said, belonged to them. I believed rules until I read a map that remembered more than people did once. I peeled the notice from my mailbox with fingers that trembled more than I wanted to admit. The paper smelled like toner and rain. Private walkway, it said, in a font that shouted even while the ink bled a little around the edges. Residents only, no public access. Violators will be fined. The orange corner flapped in the breeze like a warning flag at the edge of a cliff. On the sidewalk, chalk turtles and hopscotch squares waited in pastel stillness for the after-school stampede that would not come. Across the street, Mr. Albright, our HOA president, folded a staple gun into his palm as if it were a badge. He nodded at me with the benevolence of a man who mistakes fear for respect. I nodded back because my voice had not figured out what the truth sounded like yet. By evening, the chain was up. 2 posts sunk where the sidewalk narrowed behind the hydrangeas, linked by cold steel draped with a sign as neat as a threat. My son, Theo, stopped on his scooter and looked at me like I might have a magic word for unbreaking things. Our street is a narrow ribbon that curves toward the bus stop. Traffic rushes its length like a river that forgot we live along its banks. The back path, that slip of concrete behind our fences, has been our safe way to school, to the park, to Mrs. Ruiz's roses when she invites us to smell them. Now Theo balanced his scooter wheel on the lip of the chain, indecision wobbling in his knees. I wrapped my hand around the cool link and felt how much force it would take to break the lie. That night an email arrived from the management company, a message with no greeting beyond Dear Homeowner and no signature beyond Compliance Team. It cited Section 7.2 of our covenants, which evidently had sprouted new language about common area liability and insurance exclusions. It warned of fines per occurrence. It used the word trespass as if a sidewalk could be sinned against. Ruth from 3 doors down called me at 9. I could hear her kettle clicking as it cooled. "They cannot do this," she said, breathless. My granddaughter walks that path every morning. I had lived on Alder Court for 3 years, and I had never heard Ruth's voice shake. I had never seen Mr. Albright smile until today either. Those 2 facts stuck to each other like burrs on the hem of something I thought was ordinary. My father drove delivery trucks and kept an atlas in the glove compartment like a prayer. I grew up tracing blue rivers and dotted lines with my finger, discovering that maps are stories that do not care who tells them. You read the legend, and then the land speaks through its symbols. I am not a lawyer. I teach 5th grade, and I have handwriting that calms children who are afraid of fractions. But that night, after Theo slept and the house quieted into its clock and its refrigerator and the faint hum of the street, I printed the covenants, all 78 pages, and started underlining verbs. The more I read, the more the words folded in on themselves like a shrug. Across the hall, Theo murmured in a dream. Outside, a car hissed along wet pavement where a safer path once ran. The board met in the clubhouse on Wednesdays, under a framed photograph of the subdivision when the model homes were still decorated with helium balloons. I went. So did Ruth, and Daniel with his twin stroller, and Mrs. Ruiz who wears her hair in a white braid thick as rope. Mr. Albright sat at the center of a folding table with 2 other board members, pale papers fanned like playing cards. "We are responding to increased liability concerns," he said. He cited a child who fell last month, a teenager on a skateboard who chipped a tooth. He never used names. When I asked if there had been formal claims, he looked beyond me as if the answer were projected on the back wall. "We have a duty," he said, "to protect our members from exposure." Mr. Albright liked the word exposure. His mouth wrapped around it like a secret being avoided. Ruth stood and set her palms on the metal chair in front of her. "That sidewalk was poured by the city," she said. "I watched them lay it before the HOA even existed." Albright folded his hands. "Our records reflect that Parcel F, including the rear sidewalk, is common area," he said, domesticating his voice with a smile. The bossy ease of someone reciting. "If we allow non-residents to use it, we invite risk. Daniel's twins fussed in chorus. Mrs. Ruiz lifted her chin. The city replaced the storm grate last year, she said. Why would they maintain something they do not control? The other board members studied their lapels. At the back of the room, Mr. Burnell, who walks with a stick whittled by his own hand, cleared his throat. He lived here before the clubhouse existed. There is an easement on that strip, he said. He said it softly, like he was reminding us that water runs downhill whether we recognize it or not. After the meeting, while people pushed their chairs back, I found Mr. Burnell by the coffee urn. He smelled like cedar and old paper. My father taught me to listen to men who smell like those two things. County recorder, he said. Plat book 29, page something. He tapped his stick against his shoe. The first plat, before the amendments. Check the notes. He looked tired and angry, and something else that felt like regret. At home, Theo lay starfish on his bed, his elbow scraped from taking the long way on the street. On my phone, a notice. Fines begin Friday. I pressed my thumb to the screen. By Thursday noon, the fines had the weight of iron in my stomach, and a rumor slithered down Alder Court. The board found a lawyer. In the county building's basement, drawers groaned like old ribs. I pulled a map that breathed dust and law, and something woke inside me loudly. I left Theo at school with a kiss that clung like static to my lips and drove to the county building where government keeps its cardboard history. Fluorescent lights buzzed with an anxious patience. The assistant clerk wore earrings shaped like tiny envelopes and a name tag that said, Esme. I told her I needed the recorded plats for Alder Court. She printed a slip with a barcode and led me to a room where metal drawers sat like sleeping elephants. The air smelled like old gum and ink. First plat? She asked. The first, I said. Before the amendments. She smiled like I had said a right answer. Drawer 29 complained when she pulled it. Paper whispered. She set a giant book on a pedestal and flipped pages until ink lines formed the neighborhood I knew before my eyes. The loop of Alder Court, the rectangle of the retention pond, the ribbon of concrete sliding behind our fences. Labels floated. Tract F, open space. Lots 1128. And then, in the notes box, in letters small enough to make my heart lean closer. A 10-foot wide public pedestrian. Access easement is hereby dedicated across Tract F, connecting River Road. And Maple Park. Esme tapped the note with a fingernail that glittered blue. There it is, she said. My mouth went dry the way it does when you are hurt and your body is deciding whether to cry. Is it still valid? I asked. She shrugged, a gentle lift. If it was vacated, there'd be a separate instrument. Usually council minutes or a vacating ordinance, you can search the index by easement and by tract. She slid a keyboard toward me. The monitor hummed with a database that looked like a window into a warehouse. I typed Tract F and watched the screen populate with entries. City replacement of storm grate 3 years ago. Utility line repair. And there, grant of public pedestrian access easement recorded April 4, 1996. Instrument 96041728, Plat Book 29, page 43, as dedicated on said plat. No reference to any vacation. It was never vacated, I breathed. Esme leaned back on her heels. Looks that way. Want certified copies? I did. I wanted proof that could not be stapled over. The printer shuddered out paper with seals that made it feel like more than paper. I paid in cash and slid the copies into a manila envelope that felt like a shield. On the sidewalk outside the county building, the sun looked almost surprised to be mid-morning. I called the city planning desk. A man named Javier answered with a voice like gravel poured slowly and kindly from a bucket. I read him the instrument number. He listened without interrupting, then said, If there's a public access easement, the HOA cannot obstruct it without council action. Send me the scans. I'll forward to code enforcement and legal. We don't like people getting run over on River Road because someone closed a safe route. My breath went out in a sound that almost embarrassed me. I'm not a plaintiff, I said, because the word had appeared in my mouth like I was reading a script I had not rehearsed. I'm not asking you to be, he said. I'm asking you to be a neighbor. You already are. On Alder Court, the chain sagged between its posts like a tired mouth. A boy I did not recognize stood on the other side and looked at me with the open face of someone whose question is older than he is. "Can we go through?" he asked. His backpack rode low. He smelled like crayons and hope. "Soon," I told him. "Soon, I think." An email chimed. From the compliance team. Reminder: fines begin Friday for trespass across private walkway. Thank you for helping keep Alder Court safe and exclusive. Exclusive stuck like a bone at the back of my throat. I went inside and spread the copies on my kitchen table. The map was a hymn of lines, the legend a prayer I already believed in. Theo climbed onto a chair and planted his chin on his hands. "What is it?" he asked. "It's the story the land told the day they built our houses," I said. "And they promised we could walk through the back." He traced the little dashed line with his finger. When he lifted it, faint ink smudged his skin. He smiled like he was in on a joke with a river. His elbow scab had begun to tighten and brown. Ruth came over carrying a tin of lemon squares as if apologies could be sugared. Her hand hovered over the map like she might bless it. Mr. Burnell arrived last, careful on the steps. He held his stick like a witness. We ate lemon squares with the reverence of people preparing to fight in a quiet way. "How do we do this?" Ruth asked. Her voice was steady again. Grief had found a job and turned into resolve. "We follow the rules as sharply as they do," I said. My father had once said reading was a rebellion with manners. I believed him now. The bylaws allow us to call a special meeting with signatures from 25% of members. Mr. Burnell nodded. "They don't expect us to read the bylaws," he said. He smiled grimly. They should have met my 8th grade English teacher. We knocked on doors. We met the neighborhood anew. The Kims with their compost bin and the violin case. Miss Davenport with her cat that hated no one except vacuums. Daniel with twins who teethed on the corner of the petition while Daniel signed and laughed and apologized. People wanted simpler things than lawsuits. For their children not to be run from the soft safety of a path to the cars that did not notice small bodies poured suddenly onto the street like thoughts. At the last house, a door opened a cautious width. A woman I had seen only from across the cul-de-sac peered out. Her cardigan hung like worry on her shoulders. "I don't want trouble," she said. "Me neither," I said. "I want the old route to the park back." She looked at the manila envelope tucked under my arm the way people look at medicine they are not sure will taste good. She signed her name. Her hand shook and then steadied. At dusk, the chain glittered like a snake. Someone had tightened its bolts. Oil darkened the dirt around the footings. I found an orange-capped survey pin and measured 10 feet from the fence. The posts sat squarely in the easement. I scanned the plat, sent it to Javier, drafted a letter to the board. "We've opened a case," he replied. "Do not remove the chain yourself tonight." Near 11, a car idled. Metal kissed metal. Albright stood in the moonlight and tipped an invisible hat toward my door, then walked away along the path he had tried to erase. "The board is aware of your concerns," the email said. "Fines remain in effect." I left the map on the table like a lantern and waited for morning. By Friday sunrise, the chain gleamed like a dare. A white city truck idled, hazard lights blinking heartbeat orange. Albright's lawyer arrived with a briefcase. Javier with a clipboard. Theo squeezed my hand till Bones replied. The envelope, in my bag, bore a seal. Would the map outvoice fear and doubt? The morning peeled itself open slow, like a bandage over a healing scrape. Dew slicked the hydrangea leaves. The chain wore a thin frosting of water that turned each link into a tiny mirror of the worried faces gathering on either side. Ruth stood next to me with her lemon square tin as if sugar might be first aid. Mr. Burnell leaned on his stick, the grain of the wood catching light the way old truths do. Daniel bounced one twin while the other slept, mouth open, dreaming about milk or flight. Kids on scooters paused, one toe on the ground like birds interrupted by weather. A city truck eased in behind the chain, orange lights blinking. A woman in a reflective vest stepped out, her ponytail catching the light like a metronome. She introduced herself as Officer Patel, Code Enforcement. Javier slid out of the passenger side. He wore the same kindness like a jacket and the same clipboard like a shield. From the corner, a black sedan rolled up, all polish and posture. A man stepped out, hair perfect, tie straight, briefcase in hand. "Counsel for the board," he announced to no one and everyone. He and Officer Patel met in the middle, between two posts that staked a claim on air that did not belong to them. "We've served a notice of violation," Patel said, tapping her clipboard. "Obstruction of a recorded public pedestrian access. Easement. This chain must come down. The HOA has a duty to mitigate liability," the lawyer said smoothly, as if he were lying to a mirror. "The sidewalk is on common area, and the board has determined—" "It doesn't matter whose lawn it's on," Javier interrupted, his voice gravel poured kindly again. "The easement rides on top of the parcel. Your client took title. Subject to it." I pulled the manila envelope from my bag. The paper inside felt like a heart. "I have the original plat and the recorded instrument number," I said, holding it as steady as I could. "Instrument 96-041728. Plat book 29, page 43. It was never vacated." The lawyer took the copy as if it were hot. He scanned. His jaw did something that, if it belonged to someone I loved, I would have called a flinch. "We'll seek injunctive relief," he said reflexively. "Good," Patel said. "We love judges. Meanwhile, you're in violation of Municipal Code 1216.030. My crew removes the chain today. The city will invoice the HOA. If it's put back, we'll assess daily fines." Fines. The word had been a weapon yesterday. Today it sounded for once like a guard dog stationed on the right side of a gate. The crowd exhaled a sound like weather, changing. Albright emerged from his garage, no staple gun in hand this time, just his usual pressed polo, the collar having lost its confidence. He walked toward us, seeing, but not seeing, blurring his vision by choosing to. He stopped by the chain, right in the easement, and looked at me the way a person looks at the edge of a cliff and tells himself it is a curb. "You made this personal," he said quietly. "No," I said. My voice surprised me by being softer than I felt. "You did, when you stapled fear to our mailboxes." For a second, I saw something human under his bureaucracy, a shadow of a story he was holding like a splinter. Later, I would learn about a fall on a different board, a threatened lawsuit, a sleepless summer. Fear wears suits too, my father would have said if he had lived to see Aldercourt. Patel nodded at her crew. A man in denim and an orange vest walked up with a tool that looked like a shark's mouth. Bolt cutters. The neighborhood held its breath in a way that made me dizzy. This is what suspense is. A community inhaling at the same moment and not sure if it will be allowed to exhale as one. The tool closed around a link and the sound it made was a pop. Not dramatic, not cinematic, not an explosion, just a clean syllable of decision. The chain sagged, then fell, coiling like a stunned thing in the dewy grass. Someone laughed, surprised and a little wild. Someone clapped. Theo let go of my hand and whooped. Ruth cried and didn't pretend it was allergies. Daniel bounced both babies who flapped their arms as if they would fly. Mr. Burnell tipped his stick toward the opening with a smile that had more years in it than teeth. Patel's crew lifted the posts out of the new set concrete with the expertise of people who have removed more than a few bad ideas. The holes yawned like little mouths ready to say sorry. Javier stuck a temporary sign into the ground that read, "Public Pedestrian Access Easement. Please be respectful." It looked for the moment like a flag in pleasant weather. The chain lay coiled beside the hydrangeas, an animal that had been relocated. Albright's lawyer clicked his briefcase closed. "We'll be in touch," he said to no one, which meant everyone again. He got in the sedan and was gone with the efficiency of a threat that has not decided whether to become real. Albright stayed. He stood staring at the gap the way a person looks at a healed scar and feels phantom pain. "You can still do the right thing," I said. He looked at me. "What would that be?" "Hold the special meeting. Tell the truth. Put up signs that welcome without inviting chaos. Trust that neighbors can be decent. He laughed once, too sharp for real humor. Have you met people? I teach them, I said. When they're 10, they're better than we are. He opened his mouth, shut it, and walked away down the path he had hoped no one would use. By afternoon, the path had returned to itself. Children traced hopscotch squares as if they were drawing a map that forgot it had ever been erased. Mrs. Ruiz brought out her garden hose and washed away the oil-darkened dirt where the posts had been, humming a song I didn't know. Theo drew a turtle in chalk so green it looked like a leaf had learned to walk. In the space where the sign had hung, he wrote carefully, "Thank you." He added a tiny heart. He is not subtle. I hope he never learns to be when the truth does not require it. The fines email arrived anyway, riding in on a timer set before breakfast. Ignoring it felt like an act of liberation the size of a click. Instead, I sent the scan of the code enforcement, notice to the entire block, to the compliance team, to myself, for reasons I did not want to unpeel. Javier wrote back a single line. Case abated, monitoring continues. The city likes its nouns clean. That night we met in the clubhouse as the EER bylaws had promised we could. The helium balloons in the framed photograph had long since gone to the place helium goes, up and away. We were real people again, not just recipients of notices. Ruth called the meeting to order with a gavel that was really a wooden spoon from her kitchen. We were neighbors who cook, after all. We counted signatures. We complied with notice requirements. We did not say hostile things even when they tugged at our throats. Albright sat at the folding table, this time with no papers fanned like a hand that could win. He looked smaller, which I do not say to be cruel. He had been holding himself up, with the wrong scaffolding. When it was time for questions, Mr. Burnell stood, his stick a punctuation mark. When you forget what was promised on the day this neighborhood was born, he said, nodding toward the plat pinned to the bulletin board, you start inventing rules to feel in control. That is human. It is also dangerous because the land remembers and the paper remembers and children get hurt while we argue. We voted. We did not remove him from the board. People love to punish, and that is another danger. We expanded it. We added 2 new members, Ruth, who understands that sugar can be strategy, and Daniel, who has learned to do difficult things while holding a child. I was asked. I said yes, feeling the weight of it like a backpack you put on before a long walk. Mrs. Ruiz agreed to head a path stewardship committee, which is to say she agreed to put out a trash bag on Saturdays and give stern looks to teenagers who drop wrappers. These were our rituals of governance. They mattered because they were small enough to repeat. We passed a resolution accepting the city's sign, promising to maintain the path with the humility of people who know it does not belong to us alone. We drafted a letter to the school asking them to remind students to be kind while they were being kids. We did not declare victory. We did not claim righteousness. We wrote down the instrument number in the minutes in ink that would not fade with one rain. Later, when the room emptied, and the coffee in the urn had formed a thin skin, I found Albright by the door staring at nothing with the focus of a man trying to listen to his own apology. I was scared, he said to the exit sign. A kid fell once and the insurance threatened to. It felt like I could hold the world together if I made it smaller. I nodded. I do that with Theo, I said. And then I remember the map. He looked at me. The fight drained out. The person he is underneath showing through like a hand under paper held to the light. You found the right piece of paper, he said. The land did, I said. We just read the legend. On the way home, Theo skipped on square 10 without touching the line. The night had come on soft, bugs circling the streetlights like thoughts that aren't finished. At our mailbox, the staple holes from the notice were still there, empty eyes. I touched them and thought of my father's atlas, the way we would sit on the hood of his delivery truck on nights he finished early and traced dotted lines that meant footpath. He would tell me about easements without using the word, about permission that is older than signatures. He would say, maps are memory with good manners. We turned down the back path. It felt the way your own name does when someone you love says it, ordinary and miraculous at once. Theo rode his scooter ahead, the turtle on his t-shirt racing the chalk turtle he had drawn. The hydrangeas watched, approving. The chain was gone. The easement held like a sentence that had finally found its last word. At Maple Park, the swings creaked their small music, and the world for the moment allowed itself to be simple. A boy pumping higher, a mother counting in a voice that did not have to be loud to be heard, a neighborhood practicing the discipline of being neighbors. The water map folded in my bag. The night remembered, so did we.